Welcome back, everyone, to another exciting episode of the Dispensation of Baha'u'llah. We are on part 22, covering paragraphs 96 through 100. And without any further ado, dear friends, we'll have our opening prayer. Thank you so much.
In thy name, the sufficer, the healer, the fulfiller, the loftiest, the supreme, the Baha'u'llah Pa. We ask thee by thine ancient beauty, we supplicate thee by the manifestation of thy greatest majesty, and thy name around which the heavens of the manifestations revolve, by whose power the waters of oceans overflow, the full moons appear and light is diffused. Verily, by the invisible and the visible, the hidden and the manifest, we ask that all sorrow may be turned into joy, and all disease may be turned into health, and that every sick, afflicted, unfortunate, and constrained one may be healed of the seen and the unseen disease. Verily, thou art the powerful, the conqueror, the mighty, the living, the forgiver.
Thank you so much, Samarijan. What a beautiful healing prayer. And factoid, all the healing prayers in the prayer book are from Baha'u'llah. So that's just another interesting fact. Not that Baha'u'llah was the only one to reveal healing prayers. You can find healing prayers from Abdul Baha and selections from the writings of Abdul Baha. But the ones in our prayer book are all from Baha'u'llah. Moving on, dear friends. So happy to have everyone back for another session of the Dispensation of Baha'u'llah. So if you're joining us for the first time, you're like, what are these guys doing? We're studying the Dispensation of Baha'u'llah. And you can find the Dispensation of Baha'u'llah in the World Order of Baha'u'llah Selected Letters, okay? This was a letter, it's his sixth, that's a hard word always for me, sixth letter of the beloved guardian in the World Order letters, okay? There were 7 letters he wrote. This was his 6th one. And it's dated February 8th, 1934 by the beloved guardian, okay? This is, anyone know how many paragraphs off the top of your head for a pop quiz?
$129.
Close, Miss Darla. It's 130 even, okay? I actually looked this up, Doug. So it's exactly 130, okay? Yeah, so it's 130 paragraphs. So we, in our study, we're having 27 parts to study the whole 130 paragraphs. Right now, we're on part 22, okay? So this is, we're right now in the part entitled The Administrative Order, okay? The Administrative Order. And we're going to continue our study of this part. We just started paragraphs 96 through 100. And if you're like, Ehsan, where does paragraph 96 start? It's a long one. It should be noted at top of 145. So if you have this book handy, or it starts at the top of page 145. It should be noted in this connection, okay? So we're not going to reread it. So we read it last week, okay? But we didn't get to fully study it. So we're going to now get into our study of these paragraphs this week, okay? So what it actually, the beloved guardian is addressing in this paragraph set. So let me share my screen so we're all on board. Okay, here we go. Here we go. So these are the themes, and then I'm going to jump into the major themes and everything. But these are the topics that were addressed in paragraphs 96 through 100. okay? And so the uniqueness of the covenant and administration, the uniqueness of this covenant administration. And I remember last time I said there was an incredible compilation on the covenant and administration, and I yet have not sent it to the class, and I encourage you can find it online. It's called the Covenant and Administration. What a wonderful deepening. It's by the Deepening Committee. Back in the day, the National Spiritual Assembly had a committee called the Deepening Committee. And they put out awesome compilations and deepening materials. And one of them was called the Covenant Administration. What was so cool about it was, per se, it just wasn't on the Baha'i covenant. It tied in Christianity. It tied in, the entire, how this covenant came to be, the greater covenant, the lesser covenant. It's really cool. It's not a short compilation per se either. It's at least 100 pages. So, but it's awesome, okay? It's truly awesome. And it's online. I typed it up myself, so I know it's there. So there you go. And it's, but if you look it up, you can find it, okay? Other major topics addressed in these paragraphs: Peter the Apostle, Imám Alí, and the beloved guardian mentions that this unique covenant and administration, not even Peter the Apostle or Imám Alí himself could produce its like. So it's incredible that significance of the Baha'i administration. And it's so cool. I mean, what a time that we're at right now as we're approaching the unit convention period, and the Baha'i electoral system that we are so blessed to be a part of. How incredible this, when we look, whichever country you live in, it doesn't really matter, but I reside in the United States of America. And in this country, with all the money that is involved in elections and the canvassing and the lobbying, and how blessed, truly immensely blessed we are to have a system so beautiful as the Baha'i electoral system. And I'm just referring to the electoral system, not even the aspects of the administration. And remember, dear friends, do not look at it even currently, even how beautiful a system it is. Remember, it's still in its infancy. And if you go look at, oh, this is my spiritual assembly, and, this is how they are acting, and blah, 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 and you think that is the Baha'i administrative order. That, my dear friends, is in the very infant stage of what that divine institution will become, okay? The spiritual assembly, local spiritual assembly, which has been divinely blessed and protected by His Holiness Baha'u'llah and the Kitab Aqdas, and said that is an institution of itself. The local spiritual assembly is under, it is being brought into being by His Holiness Baha'u'llah. And so that one is, currently, we're only per se just approaching 200 years, since the birth of the faith, in 1844 to, 200, just little over, 200 years. And we're such an infant faith. And so our understandings of the institutions, as well as the maturation of it, is still so nascent. I remember, dear friends, our understanding even of the single concept of consultation in this world of competition and, domineering our ideas, is still a new idea, this Baha'i consultation idea. It's so novel. And it's so, has not been practiced. And I was thinking, before we go into, our full study, I was thinking, how in God's name will this Baha'i world order come into being? And the solution is that as Baha'is, we teach our children these principles. It will not be even in our lifetime, myself, but we teach the principles of Baha'i consultation. We teach the principles of Baha'i justice. We teach these principles to our children, and they become a new creation. And then they teach those, so every one of those children becomes a new creation. So those outworn ideas start being removed from their eyes, per se. The prejudicial thoughts start being removed from their eyes. They immediately think of consultation over competition. And these thoughts and ideas become natural to them. They become, as Baha'u'llah says, a new race of men. This is how it happens. It's not just appears and suddenly, like, I taught 25 people and suddenly it's going to happen, No, it's going to take generation after generation of Baha'is teaching, and their children, as well as teaching their friends, and over time, this transformation of character will permeate into, and this will create, per se, a new culture and understanding of what is transformation, inner transformation. This will be forthcoming, through as a process. That was just, as they say, my own thoughts on that. This is one of the, as they say, why was the Dispensation of Baha'u'llah written? Because these are the fundamental verities of our faith, fundamental verity, the truths. This is a unique system that has been created, the Baha'i administrative order. It is absolutely significant in every aspect. And is this system just for North American Baha'i community? No. Is this just for the African population or the Australasian population? No. This is for the whole world, the transformation of humanity. This is the Baha'i administrative order. So these are the themes that we're going to be discussing. So we read this last time. I don't want to belabor our dear friends tonight. And so all of our friends have to go through it. But I encourage you again to reread it, okay? So in this section, dear friends, of this letter, his letter, the beloved guardian's letter, he is highlighting the unprecedented nature and the significance of this Baha'i administrative order. I want to point out something. In the opening of every one of these sections, the first section, Baha'u'llah, the next, the Blessed Bab, the next, Abdul Baha, right? Next, administrative order. In every one of these sections, how does the beloved guardian open? He highlights the uniqueness and significance of that each one prior manifestation of God or central figure, all of the central figures, right? And the only one that wasn't a central figure, His Holiness Abdul Baha, manifestation of God was not a manifestation of God. Abdul Baha, he highlights his uniqueness. So in this sense, in the administrative order, he's highlighting the uniqueness of this administrative order, the significance of it. This order is a vital element in both the evolution of the Baha'i faith and of humanity on this planet. Key point, dear friends, the Baha'i faith is evolutionary, okay? Even within our lifetime, it's been evolutionary. Think about it, dear friends. In my little lifetime from, I was born in 1980 and now we're in 2022. I have seen, I've seen firesides, I have seen, and then a new thing came along called the institute process, right? And even before all of that, we've always had 19-day feasts, right? And we've had deepenings. But then we had this thing emerge about 20 some odd years ago called the institute process. Huh? And everyone went, huh? It was literally a like, what's going on moment, right? And then there was a thing called clusters. What? Where did that thing come from? And then, so then now there's all these clusters emerging. And then we went through a period called A, B, C, D. Hey, some of us weren't very good in school, so we kind of understood this concept down. You want to be an A, right? And so we all started working really hard to get to A, right? So everyone started to say, okay, we got to do our, everything the house is saying, do everything right, so we become A. Then, after a while, it changed to milestone. What? I thought we're doing A business, right? So this is, even within our lifetime, it's changed from, terminology to milestones, right? And then even our clusters have been changing in size, dimensions. There has been differences in functionalities and personalities within the cluster. There's been institute coordinators and devotional coordinators and statistics officers. You name it, and all of this is part of the natural evolution and maturation of the growth of an area. This is evolutionary, based upon the needs of an organic growth. Think about it. We're an organism, right? If you just treat the organism at the same level as the seed, that organism needs more nutrients, more sustenance, more tending. Now it's reached a higher capacity. That's why the main document, about 8 years ago was called Building Momentum, right? And the Universal House of Justice is called, all of these documents called Building Capacity, right? So if you're building capacity, you are growing. So if you're at a higher stage, you need more sustenance, you need more growth, you need more nutrients and more to engage in. So this is why the Universal House of Justice has been adding in this evolutionary growth other other tool sets per se. One tool set was this junior youth empowerment program to foster the spiritual growth of our junior youth, right? Another tool set that has always been in place is just that now the Universal House of Justice is saying, use it, my dear friends, children's classes, but not just for the Baha'is, but for the wider society, neighborhood children's classes, right? And then the Universal House of Justice is saying, we encourage you to have these study circles. And this is not just for Baha'is. These are for the wider society. This is called this outward looking orientation, right? This is the evolutionary aspect of our faith. So some friends, interestingly, when this new evolutionary approach appeared, they were like, oh, so this is the new approach to teaching. Actually, dear friends, this is not the new approach to teaching. This is a new approach to consolidation, okay? This is our community. We should always be teaching. It should be part and parcel of who you are. You should be, to define my dear Darla, who's Miss Darla, or to define my dear Farzad. Farzad is a teacher. You see, you cannot separate that. That should be who you are. Okay? That is, you should be a teacher. Every part and element of you. So my point on this is that when you open your mouth, you talk to someone, and it should naturally come out that you are a Baha'i. Naturally come out. They should know you're a Baha'i. Even if you haven't said it, they should be saying, hey, there's something different about this guy, by his honesty, by his love, by his courtesy, by his, by his integrity, in his business. I work in a very tough business. Big monies, oil and gas, whatever, right? And most people in this business are not very honest, but it's just how it is. But by God, we are as honest and just as you get it. And so we have created a respect for our company, and people ask, what is different about you? You see? And that's how it should be. And it's not just oil and gas, it should be every business. Imagine that. The standard of how business is done by Baha'is. You see what I'm saying? This is how you create a new world. Dear friends, this is just some thoughts I wanted to share on that. But this is a system that is being brought into being, this administrative order, unique in every aspect. So these are some of the major key points in this paragraph set. The Baha'i administrative order is fundamentally different from anything that has been established by any manifestation of God in the previous dispensations. Neither the gospel nor the Quran contained explicitly written text for Peter, the chief of the apostles of Christ, or Imám Alí, the son-in-law of Muhammad, to support their claim to the primacy with which they had both been invested, and thus to silence those who usurped their authority. So neither one of them contained explicitly written text. The provisions incorporated in this Baha'i administrative order safeguard the Baha'i faith against any schism, division, separation. So the provisions incorporated in this Baha'i administrative order protects it, lays the unity for the Baha'i community. The Baha'i administrative order represents the power and majesty that the future Baha'i Commonwealth and the world order of Baha'u'llah will manifest. And we talked about in Advent of Divine Justice about the Baha'i World Commonwealth. That was a very cool part where we went through all the elements of what the Baha'i World Commonwealth will look like. And I'm not going to belabor it in this session, but so many incredible things. And this is all due to this unique system, namely the Baha'i administrative order. The Baha'i administrative order is distinctively different from any administrative structure established by the past manifestation, the previous manifestations of God. Now, I want you to always speak like how the beloved guardian spoke, in the sense of not belittling the previous manifestations of God when you speak, okay? If you may praise the manifestation of God, but not belittle the past one in how you speak, okay? Look, read the paragraph 96. How did the beloved guardian speak? He implicitly praises the manifestation of God, but he makes his point that this system, the Baha'i administrative order, is unique. The past manifestation of God he does not try to put them down by saying they did not have this system. Were not good enough to have this system or whatever. He is saying, but his point is, he's saying, beloved Christ or His Holiness Muhammad or whatever, or in this sense, Peter or the Imam, they did not have that either uniqueness, or were not conferred that privilege to be able to have this type of, bring about this kind of system. The beloved guardian identifies the primary reasons for this distinction. This is paragraph 96. So these are, I brought and bullet pointed, these are the primary reasons for the distinction of the Baha'i administrative order. Baha'u'llah himself revealed the principles of the Baha'i administrative order. Supreme manifestation of God revealed the principles of this system that we will last, as they say, for 500,000 years. Okay? This has been brought in by Baha'u'llah. He established its institutions. You're like, where did he establish its institutions? It's a small book. It's called Kitab Ahdas. Right? He brought those institutions into being. He appointed his successor. Where did he appoint his successor? Kitab At, right? The book of his covenant. Now, His Holiness Abdul Baha. And he gave him the authority to interpret his words. So, boom, he designed an infallible body, the Universal House of Justice, with authority, legislate the new laws and ordinances. So, this is straight from this top, as they say. This is straight from the top. Baha'u'llah has brought the whole order himself, okay? That's why it is absolutely unique. None of the holy scriptures from earlier religions, including those of the Bahá'í dispensation, offer a covenant or an administrative order comparable with the Baha'i administration. The beloved guardian Shaykh Effendi refers to Christianity and Islam as examples. Okay, not to pick on any, he picked on him because of numerical number of followers, right? So he says, okay, let's look at Christianity and Islam as examples. He says, neither the gospel nor the Quran contained explicitly written text regarding the authority of Peter, the chief of the apostles of Christ in the Gospels, or Imám Alí, the son-in-law of Muhammad, to interpret the holy writings or to administer the affairs of their respective communities. So neither one of them contained explicitly written text regarding the authority. Neither one of them. In fact, neither of them could produce any written assertion from Jesus Christ or Muhammad to support the supremacy with which they had been invested with. So this was the reason why both of them entered schisms. The church was split. There was Peter, the head of the church, was the Catholics, and then it was immediately split. There was later on Protestants, and you name it, right? In Islam, the Shias and the Sunnis, right? And then many other divisions happened. So these were what happened. Simon Peter was a fisherman from Bethsaida, a village in the province of Galilee. His Holiness Jesus Christ chose him as one of his 12 disciples and their leader. He features prominently in the New Testament, the Gospels, as well as the Acts, by only a few of the other disciples. And on the night before the crucifixion of His Holiness Jesus Christ, Peter's faith was shaken, and he denied His Holiness Jesus Christ 3 times. However, afterwards, he remained steadfast. This, however, remained steadfast, that is from His Holiness Abdul Baha. And we find that in Abdul Baha on Divine Philosophy. So, and there's 2 little quotes on the right, and one of them is a cartoon, and I thought it was funny to include for our class as always. So it says, as with all our failures, God used Peter's 3 denials of Jesus to turn him from Simon, a common man with a common name, into Peter the Rock. So just a commoner with a common name, but His Holiness Jesus Christ transformed him into Peter the Rock. And here's my cartoon I found that was funny. So this guy is printing business cards. He says, here's your order, sir, 1,000 business cards saying Simon the Fisherman. And then later that day, Simon, from now on, you shall be known as Peter. So I found that humorous, that imagine, His Holiness Jesus Christ now saying, now you are known as Peter. And he's like, oh man, I just got my business cards taken care of. So anyway, so Peter, right, the apostle, he is the chief disciple, right? Very important. Jesus designated Peter as the rock on which the church would be founded. And he was consistently named the first in the lists of the 12 disciples of Jesus Christ. And he had great influence on the church in the early days of its formation. And he is known as the leader and missionary in the early Christian church, and is traditionally considered as the first pope by the Roman Catholic Church. So this is, who knows if this is a picture, or this is, as they say, an effigy of Saint Peter here. And this is from Matthew chapter 16, verse 18. It says, you are a rock, and on this rock I will build my church, right? This is addressing Peter. So this is inside the St. Peter's Basilica, okay? And I have a video. I don't know if I'm going to show it, but I might send you the link. That's probably better for tonight. I might send you the link for the class. But inside St. Peter's Basilica, okay, in the Vatican, there is this incredible quote at the very top of the dome. Tu es Petrus, et super hanc Petreum edificabo ecclesiam meam. And the ironic thing is, I took Latin for several years and I've totally forgotten pronunciation, right? But the reality is, this is what it says in English. And so I say to you, you are Peter, tu es Petrus, you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of the netherworld shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven, right? So this is tu es Petrus. You are Peter. And this is in the very dome of St. Peter's Basilica. And here now stating that Peter, the foremost disciple of His Holiness Jesus Christ, the first pope and of the Roman Catholic Church here. So this is pretty significant, right? So this is the video I have. I'm going to send this to the class because I don't. It's 6 minutes, but I'll save it for the class for next, so you can see it. But Peter, accompanied by his wife, traveled extensively in his missionary activities, and he finally died the death of a martyr in Rome around 64 AD. Now, look how he's being martyred. You see how he's upside down on the crucifix, right? Why do you think that is? Anyone in my class?
He said it was because he wasn't worthy to be crucified the same way that Christ was.
Spot on, absolutely. Extra credit points. He was not worthy. Isn't that incredible humility? Incredible humility. Even at the moments of death, at least, you know, to request how to die, that you be placed upside down like that. Truly, it's amazing how I encourage you also to look at how these the martyrdoms of all these disciples, each one of them martyred in brutal ways, and how they sacrificed their lives to very similar to the dawn breakers, the early dawn breakers, the how they sacrificed and gave life and limb and to as they say, to propagate the faith. And the early disciples of Christ, what they did. Riaz John, please, you have a hand.
Thank you very much. The words of Jesus Christ addressed to Peter are so strong and so definitive that whatever Peter does, nothing can prevent its success. And yet, even with those very definitive words of Jesus addressed to him, still Luther and others, they created other paths. They did not follow the path of Peter.
Yeah.
If I'm correct, this is my impression. And many other churches, current churches that I have visited, they do not follow the Vatican, even though Jesus said, "Whatever your hands put together, nothing can stop it." Of course, it succeeded. Christ's faith succeeded across the world, but still many diverted from Peter, is my impression, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you, Riaz John. Doug, you have a hand, please.
I think what happened in that case was that the church stopped following Peter's lead, and became engaged in the Catholic Church I'm talking about, became engaged in activities and behaviors that were far removed from the teachings of Jesus. And it was that Martin Luther and the other Reformation principles were reacting to. And anyway, I think that's what happened.
Thank you. Yeah. The history of Christianity, is a very interesting one. And every one of us, as we call ourselves Baha'is, sure, we should be knowledgeable on the Baha'i faith, on the tenets, the teachings, the history, the proofs. But as a Baha'i, we should be knowledgeable on the faith. That's why it's called Baha'i faith. We should be knowledgeable on the faith of God. We should be knowledgeable on Christianity, on Islam, on the Judaic faith, on Hindu faith, on the Buddhist faith, on all of our faiths, and as they are all part of the faith of God. And Christianity, as I live in a Christian country, and this is as United States. This country, and as most of Europe is Christian, the reality is these areas have been so influenced with the teachings of His Holiness Jesus Christ. We should be well versed and knowledgeable on the history also, not just the teachings, but the history of what has transpired. As dear Doug mentioned, it's the faith of Jesus Christ started losing, per se, its efficacy very quickly after he left this physical plane, and per se very quickly also after these great souls from Peter and the apostles left, they were started having distortions and impurities, and these popes started injecting their own ideologies into councils, such as the Council of Nicaea, etc., etc. They started injecting their own dogmas, traditions, and ideologies. So what happened is, later on, as dear Doug mentioned, there was a clashback. Apart from the fact that there was a lot of immoralities, as well as materialism, inside the early Catholic Church, which was very different than what His Holiness Jesus Christ was speaking about, where he said His Holiness Jesus Christ wanted to remove the profiteering even within the church. He said he went to the tax people and tried to throw them all out, the people that were, and so the entire aspect of how. So Miss Yuda, please, you have a hand.
I'm born in a town where Luther went to the monastery and he taught at the university. And the final straw was when the Catholic Church was selling absolutions from sins. And it was really the final thing that happened.
Yeah. They still do. I mean, they still do these kind of things, right? I mean, it's very interesting that, for serious crimes, not even minor things, you can go to a church and, and they say, 20 Hail Marys and, and, for the, and, for prep, this or that. And when's the last time you visited the church? When's the last, and do 20 Hail Marys, and your sins have been forgiven. That's it. Imagine that, dear friends. I did that really bad thing, and I just have to go to church, meet with this guy, and I say 20 Hail Marys, and I'm scot-free, right? According to the big guy. It makes you really think, and that's why Luther reacted to that. He saw this type of, system that has been created, that, you pay a clergyman, and he reacted to it. He said, this isn't divine. This isn't a system that I ascribe to. So he wrote his 95 theses and he put it on the per se, the church. That was, and created the Reformation movement, the Martin Luther Reformation movement, and created Lutheran. It's quite, and I encourage you to read what a massive shift in Protestants that created. So yeah, moving on. That was a good discussion on that. But yeah, go read. Even if you are not a big reader, go watch. There's so many wonderful YouTube videos on early Christian history. And I encourage you to even just watch some of them, and you can learn about how the Catholic Church, became, and then from Martin Luther and his 95 Theses, and how all of that came about. It's very interesting. I encourage you to educate yourselves on these things. So another one of these individuals, apart from Peter, mentioned by the beloved guardian, is Imám Alí. And we mentioned Imam Ali earlier in the dispensation of Baha'u'llah. So this is the second time. Ali ibn Ali Talib was the cousin and son-in-law of Muhammad. So he's the son-in-law. He was married to his daughter, Fatima, and Ali was also the first person to accept Muhammad as a manifestation of God. And he dedicated his life to the cause of Islam. So if someone asked you, pub quiz, who was the first person to accept Muhammad? Now you know, right? His son-in-law, Ali, Imam Ali. So during his lifetime, Muhammad verbally implied, so during his lifetime, Muhammad verbally implied that Ali was his successor on a number of occasions. However, when Muhammad died in AD 632, Ali could not prove his right of succession. And he was preceded in the caliphate by Abu Bakr, Omar, Osman, and hence did not become a caliph until AD 656. So that is 24 years later. Okay, so 24 years later, through having Abu Bakr, Omar, and Osman. Because of verbal, this is how it was tradition, the oral tradition, and Abu Bakr was much more senior. Ali was a young guy. He was at that time. In the first year of his reign, Ali had to deal with a rebellion led by Aisha, the second wife of Muhammad. And although the rebellion was suppressed in AD 657, not all disputes over Ali's right to the caliphate were resolved. And one of the members of Osman's family, Muawiyah, did not accept the authority of Ali and claimed himself to be the caliph. This conflict continued until a member of the Khawarij sect murdered Ali in a Kufa in AD 661. And this is another thing. All of these imams also died pretty brutally too, poisoned and beheaded. Encourage you also to, not encourage you to research how they died, but they also suffered a lot, these imams, you know, and these were incredibly wonderful souls that were working to propagate, you know, also the faith of God at their point in time. So these imams. Riaz John, please.
If I'm not mistaken, in the book, the Dawnbreakers.
Yes.
In the introduction, the very first beginning of the book, in the introduction, if I'm not mistaken, all these imams, 11 imams, are listed by name. And I don't know, maybe the manner of their death, but it's a quick overview of the imams, the 11 imams.
Sure.
That form the imamate, which Shaykh Effendi, if I'm not mistaken, describes as the legitimate branch of Islam. And it was the imamate that zeroed in on the Bab, on the appearance of the Qa'im, or the rising of the 12th Imam, which was the Bab. And just, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, exactly, Riaz John. I'm not sure if in the Dawnbreakers it mentions the imams by name, but absolutely it mentions the this exactly what you said, in the sense of that His Holiness the Bab is the 12th Imam foretold, and he is the missing, the Imam that went into hiding, the 12th Imam. And so that is something that I will send to the class about the names of the Imams, as well as how the Blessed Bab is the Qayyim, the 12th Imam. This is something that I also encourage, because also the beloved guardian encourages us to read up and study up on Islam, the proofs of Islam. And one of them is, if you have a Muslim friend and he says, how can you claim that the Bab is the Qayyim, the 12th Imam? So you need to be studied up, well versed. So I'll send you a wonderful book. It's called by M. Mustafa Baha'u'llah. It's called the Baha'u'llah, Baha'u'llah, the Great Remembrance. Let me pull it up. Baha'u'llah.
Hey, I read a son in the Quran books that is printed in England. This mentions all about the mullahs and all these things about the imams from the number 1 up to number 12. And then the 12 one is to be hiding, and then the Mahdi, they are going to wait for the coming, and that is to be the Qaim, which is to be the Bab. So it is mentioned over there.
Yeah.
I read it in the book of the one that's printed in England. So maybe I can find out for the next meeting, maybe.
I will send you an awesome book to the class that shows that as we have talked about Islam extensively, in our Advent class, we've also in several other parts talked about Islam. And I encourage you to, in your spare time, also to build your knowledge, even if you're coming from a Western tradition. In fact, and there's an awesome book by Marzia Gale that says, and she was often in the company of the beloved guardian Abdul Baha, and what she said is that as the individuals of the West should refine their tongues so to be able to vindicate Islam, prove Islam, the tenets of Islam, because it's being polluted. So we have to be able to vindicate Islam, prove the actual truths of Islam.
I think Farzad found it.
Oh, excellent.
It's either the foreword or the introduction before the actual text of the history begins. It's like a foreword or a introduction.
Yes, Riaz Jan is absolutely correct. I have an older version of the Dawnbreakers, so there's no page number. It's in towards the end of the introduction. There's a whole page that lists all the 12 imams.
Is it in the introduction itself or in the preface?
It is in the introduction.
It's in the introduction.
And then the title is Distinguishing Features of Shia Islam.
There
It
you
has
go.
all 12
And it
names.
mentions-
Yeah,
how
it
they
should be
treated
Shia.
life.
You're right. Yeah, Shia Islam.
It also mentions who the father, the mother, and
Yeah.
how they died. They were poisoned. Yes.
Yeah. So absolutely great Riaz Jan. So, and the reason why the beloved guardian went to that length to bring that history also into the Dawnbreakers, because remember, this is it's not just a history book, the Dawnbreakers for the Baha'i community. You know, it's
reference document.
It's more than that, dear Tesfa. It's not just a reference document that sits, it's, you know, so we go back and look at, you know, a point in time or whatever. It is, when I think of the Dawnbreakers, I think of it as, it is life. It should be alive, if that makes, I don't know if that makes sense, because it's not just a history. History is something dead. You see, that's something from 100 years ago. Right now, you know, the Dawnbreakers happened 1840s, you know, 1850s, 150 years ago. You know, we're living in 2022. And then, you know, in 100 years, you know, it will be 200 years ago from the Dawnbreakers. But the Dawnbreakers will be ever pertinent through all the Baha'i dispensation. The Dawnbreakers is ever pertinent now. It is alive. And why is it alive? Because it shows the transformation of a band of individuals that sought after the manifestation of God in a time period of absolute ignominy. These people were absolutely blinded by their hate and savagery. And what did they do? These pure souls, they followed the manifestation of God to their deaths, willingly, with absolute love. And even when they were being tortured, they leapt with joy. I mean, Haji Suleiman Khan, what an incredible soul. And never has there been such an individual in the history of faith like a Haji Suleiman Khan. And so these kind of individuals is unique in the episode of faith. And so this is something that why I say, you know, when terminology like saying it's a history book or it's a reference book. Reference book is probably, at least in my terminology, would be one of the most belittling things to the Dawnbreakers, because it sounds like just something like it's a library book. You know, just go to a library and just open it. The Dawnbreakers is something that is alive, and it should be internalized, is the Dawnbreakers. It should be something that we reference and then internalize that experience, and we should be constantly contemplating on the lives. It's not just, hey, remember thy days during thy days in my distress and banishment in this remote prison. It's not just always referring to Baha'u'llah, His Holiness Baha'u'llah, in the tablet of Ahmad. We should meditate on the suffering of all these souls. Dawnbreakers, read it. Think about Tahireh. Think about what this beautiful lady, Zareen Taj, Quratul Ain, the titles bestowed upon her. What an incredible lady. What did she go through? The sufferings of Wahi, the sufferings of Hujat, the sufferings. What did they go through? And these people were the brightest and the most luminary of that area. What did they go through? And these people were just, per se, some of them ordinary, some of them bright, brilliant citizens, but they had pure hearts and they recognized this individual. And you have to think, if the Blessed Bab or Baha'u'llah was here, would I recognize him? And then if that is He has come. His message has come. The Universal House of Justice is giving the message. Are we obeying in this day? You know, it's just like Baha'u'llah. He has come. He is giving his message. Now, are we obeying? Right? Riyaz, you have a hand.
Thank you so much. The discovery of the Bab is quite dramatic. Of course, in the West, the Millerites and the German Templars, they also arrived at the year, and the German Templars, they even identified the general area, location, geographical location. They went to the foot of Mount Carmel and waited. But the information they had was not very precise or precise enough. But two individuals that we don't usually mention played a key role. These were two scholars, Islamic scholars, Sheikh Ahmad Ahsai and Sayyid Kazim Rashti. These were two Islamic scholars. So they had the inspiration or intuition to notice that the time had come. The 1,000 years of waiting that was promised in the Hadith. They figured that that's 1,000 years is upon them. So they started these classes and they recruited interested people as students, and they sent out the students to find the Bab. One of them, Mullah Hussein, he obeyed, he went. And he went to Shiraz. But according to history, when he arrived in the vicinity of Shiraz, he had no idea how to find the person of the Bab. So he was meandering towards the city of Shiraz, but the Bab knew what was happening. So the Bab came to his rescue, grabbed him by the collar, said, "You come with me. I need to talk with you." And Mullah Hussein tried to get out of this engagement, but the Bab insisted. He said, "No, your friends are okay. You come with me." So this is a very dramatic instance. And even in the presence of the Bab, Mullah Hussein was not he was not ready to immediately recognize the Bab. He questioned the Bab.
Absolutely.
Until the Bab chastised him and told him, "You do not test God." Then the Bab said, "The moment has come for the revelation of the commentary on the Surah of Joseph, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a prophecy that the Qa'im will on his own, spontaneously, without any request, spontaneously revealed this particular commentary." And when Mullah Hussein witnessed the revelation of that particular commentary, he lost it. He departed from this physical world and spiritually became so transformed that the Bab said, "No, you cannot go home in the streets. People will be certain that you're mad, you're crazy." So anyway, it's very dramatic sequence of events.
Beautifully said, Riyaz John. And I hope everyone that heard Riaz John, it gives them excitement to go reread the Dawnbreakers, okay? So this is, it is a text that gives fire. It is a text that gives fire. And it is a text that the beloved guardian said that we should read and reread. And because it gives fire in your veins, reading the accounts of the sacrifices of your brothers and sisters in the cradle of the faith. And in this day and age, with all of our freedoms, what they have given to provide their life, they have given their lifeblood to water the soils so that this, what we're about, this admin order could come in, this new creation. They have given their lifeblood. It should give you fire to your veins, reading, so that you, as in with all your freedoms, can become a mouthpiece to teach the cause. So that's why the beloved guardian says, you every month should read the Dawnbreakers. And that is actually a call to the youth. It's in a compilation to the youth. It says every month you should read cover to cover the Dawnbreakers. Now that is a call, and we should be well versed in it, the history of our faith. And wonderful, wonderful Riaz John. I encourage the friends to read, and even if you can, your eyesight is bad, I put the whole Dawnbreakers on YouTube, so you can listen to the Dawnbreakers chapter by chapter. So you just have to search for the Dawnbreakers on YouTube, and you could just listen to the whole thing, from the preface all the way to the last chapter. So, so I encourage you to, in your time, to listen and read these opportunities. Farzad Jan, please.
I'm sorry, I don't want to take too much of the class time, but just briefly, I think this is important. As we know, when Shoghi Effendi was appointed as the guardian after the passing of Abdul Baha in 1921, with everything that he had going on, this book was the first thing he did, translation into English.
Mm-hmm.
So just to emphasize on what you were saying, he thought it was that important for the friends in the West to know about the history of the faith.
Yeah. I mean, he could have done anything. I mean, this is the guardian, the sign of God on earth. And as one of the first things he did was and it's not a mere translation of Nabil Azam's Dawnbreakers. And I've talked about that before. He had to edit it. He had to go through all the history and notes, the French notes, the accounts. It was incredible work to get this out. And it's mentioned in the Dispensation of Baha'u'llah itself, why he did that. In the section on the Blessed Bab, it's the beloved guardian actually mentions himself why he did the Dawnbreakers. It's to bring the love of the Baha'is to the Blessed Bab. That's why he did it. Because some of the friends said, I don't even know much about the Blessed Bab. We don't have much of the writings of the Blessed Bab in English. We just have selections from the writings of the Bab. So some of the friends, they don't feel very connected to the Blessed Bab. And so the beloved guardian wanted to emphasize the station, the significance, that this faith starting point is what? 1844. So it's from the ministry also of the Blessed Bab. And so that is the year. So that's why we have to be well versed in our faith. We have to know how all these events happened. So anyway, moving on. We've talked at length on this. So I just want to finish up this part. At present, world events and the progress of the Baha'i faith are under the influence of two processes of disintegration and integration. We have talked about this, dear friends, at great length in Advent of Divine Justice, and it's also mentioned at great length in the beloved guardian's last major letter in the World Order of Baha'u'llah. And you're like, Ehsan, what's that last major letter called? It's called the Unfoldment of World Civilization. Okay? So in the Unfoldment of World Civilization, it talks about these twin processes of integration and disintegration at much greater length, these two processes. On one hand, the elements of the old world order are progressively crumbling and perishing. This is called disintegration. And then on the other hand, the Baha'i faith is growing and its influence on the world is increasing day by day as the components of the new world order embedded within the faith are gradually unfolded and developed. Now, the key word here is gradually. If you remember from our Advent of Divine Justice class, I had a slide on this. I don't know if it's in, I copied it from the Advent class, because the process of integration, where this is the new fledgling Baha'i administrative order, the Baha'i community gradually growing, I put it as a tortoise, a tortoise. Slow and steady is the words of the beloved guardian. Slow and steady is the growth of the Baha'i community, gradually unfolding. But the process of disintegration, that is fast, right? Fast and furious. The words of the beloved guardian, if you look it up in Promised Day is Come, it's like a tempest unrestrained, right? This is the process of disintegration. It's fast and furious. So two processes that are simultaneously, these are twin processes that are at play in the world. And both processes have the same ultimate outcome, will bring about this golden age of the faith. One will be tearing up all of these these ideologies and modes of thinking and that have worn their time, and the process of integration, bringing about this new system, this new world order into being. This are working hand in hand. These two processes are driven by a God-born force. This is actually from Advent, and we find that on page 46, this God-born force. This was released through the revelations of the Blessed Bab and Baha'u'llah. When a manifestation of God appears, through their coming, they inject spiritual energies into the world. This is called the God-born force. And it was through this God-born force that was released by the coming of two twin manifestations of God, the Blessed Bab and Baha'u'llah. This force is irresistible in its sweeping power, incalculable in its potency, and unpredictable in its course, mysterious in its workings, and awe-inspiring in its manifestations. It is this power that has been, per se, not injected, but ejected. This power has been thrust upon the world. It has been poured and thrown at every point and place in the world, the sweeping power by the twin manifestation. This is the power of these twin manifestations that is going to transform the whole planet. Okay, let us we have a few more slides and then we are at that closing point. My dear Tesfai, if you could read this slide for us.
Okay. During the formative age, this force exerts its influence through the Baha'i administrative order and will continue to drive civilization towards its ultimate goal, the golden age of the cause, when the kingdom of God is established on earth. This makes the Baha'i administrative a vital element in the evolution of both the Baha'i faith and humanity on this planet. In this regard, Shoghi Effendi explains the spirit breathed by Baha'u'llah upon the world earned never permeate and exercise an abiding influence upon mankind unless and until it incarnates itself in a visible order which would bear his name, wholly identify itself with his principles and functions in conformity with his laws.
Thank you so much, Tesfai.
Thank you.
This is such a powerful quote from the beloved guardian, saying the spirit breathed by Baha'u'llah upon the world can never permeate and exercise an abiding influence upon mankind unless and until it incarnates itself in a visible order. This visible order is the Baha'i administrative order. It needs to be incarnated. The words of Baha'u'llah breathed needs to take a reality, a life itself, become an incarnation of the words. It needs to come into reality. Something which would bear his name. So you would become an incarnation of the words of Baha'u'llah. So where Baha'u'llah says truthfulness, you are a vehicle of truthfulness. Where Baha'u'llah mentions men, where he talks about the qualities and attributes of a member of the spiritual assembly, you are the incarnation of that by having those qualities and attributes as a member of the spiritual assembly. You follow? This is the incarnation of his words. You bear his name. Wholly, this is not partly, wholly identify itself with his principles and function in conformity with his laws. This is how the spirit of Baha'u'llah can affect the world. This is what the beloved guardian says. This is the only way, and why I stress that enough. This is the only way, because he says here, the spirit breathed by Baha'u'llah upon the world can never permeate. It cannot permeate. I don't. Many of us are long ago took science classes. You know, the word permeate means like a liquid going through into the pores. Permeate, entering into all the pores. This pore space, permeation. It cannot do that unless and until the word becomes a reality. It needs to become a reality. It's not just an idea, a nice fanciful club that we attend on Sundays, a mehmuni or something like that. I attend this nice association of Baha'is, and we go and have nice gatherings, and we eat nice foods, and we sit around and say prayers, and then we go and think about what activities to do. The word of Baha'u'llah needs to enter into the heart and become you. This is the reality of what it means to be a Baha'i. This is, and unless and until that happens, the spirit breathed by Baha'u'llah upon the world can never permeate and exercise an abiding influence upon mankind. Why were the hands of the cause so successful? We talked about the hands of the cause in a past session. It's because the word permeated them. Look at their lives. They were the word. They were the word. They bore his name. They were the hands of the cause of God. Every one of us should aspire to live ever just getting closer to that. That's really, we'll never get close. You know, we talk about exemplar Abdu'l-Baha. We talked about the section on Abdu'l-Baha. He's so above us. We should, as they say, have, a goal, maybe a hand of the cause of God. Think about, that's why we need to read. Look at the hand of the cause of God and aspire. What did they do? How can I do more? What did they do and how can I do more? The reality is they bore his name. Very similar to us. We all say, I'm a Baha'i. Okay? Now I'm saying I'm a Baha'i. Now what next? The reality is, as a Baha'i, it shouldn't be, what is this faith doing for me? It should be, what am I doing for the faith? What are you doing? If you're saying, I do a devotional, I do this, how many devotionals are you also supporting? Helping? How many other people are you accompanying to have another devotional? You say, I participate in a study circle. How many other people are you assisting and accompanying to further the process? Or are you just kind of doing it yourself? What more can you do? What more can you do to increase the momentum? This should be a constant thought and a burning desire. What more can you do? Because it's not me asking you this. Remember, we all have a time clock. He will ask you that question eventually. He said, we all have that time clock, and he will ask you that question. You'll say, what more could have you done? Doug, you have a hand, please.
I have two thoughts to offer that's related to what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is referring back to Christianity and what happened to it.
Right. Go ahead.
Christianity became the state religion of the Roman Empire when Emperor Constantine decided to make it that.
Right.
Until that time, being a Christian was a real liability, and people who were Christians did so because they were devoted to Jesus.
Absolutely.
After Constantine made his decision, it became a political advantage and a business advantage to be a Christian. And that introduced a set of incentives that was the beginning of the corruption of Christianity. That's personal opinion. And kind of related to that, I think that is a kind of a warning sign, something to pay attention to as the Baha'i faith progresses. And the other thing that I'm noticing is that the administrative order is an architecture, and it's a set of operating principles. And in order to make that really achieve its potential, it requires the participation of people who are deepened, devoted, possessing of the qualities that you've been describing, Ihsan. And without that, it just becomes another bureaucracy.
Right.
And I kind of wonder if maybe one of the important things that had to be accomplished for the election of the first Universal House of Justice was for there to be raised up an adequate number of people who had the necessary qualities, spiritual qualities, to be in that organization. That's all I have to say.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Two very insightful comments. Thank you very much, Doug. Yeah, absolutely. I think after the completion of the 10-year crusade and the achievements of having all these national spiritual assemblies, the raising of all these communities around the world, at that point in time, 1963, the world now at that point in time had reached a mark that it had never achieved before. There was now sufficient number of Baha'is and national spiritual assemblies for an international election. So that was unique. Prior to 1963 election of the Universal House of Justice, there were still wonderful souls. There were still wonderful Baha'is, but it wasn't on an international sphere like that. Okay, so that's why it had to reach that level and it was at the end of the 10-year crusade. And we've seen the pictures of the conclave of the Hands of the Cause of God meeting with the International Baha'i Council. It's really, I'm so jealous of the Baha'is that lived through that point in time. I mean, there's so many periods that you just wish, obviously during the time period of the central figures, that would have been really cool to live during that. Another cool period to live through was the period of the custodians, to see all the Hands of the Cause of God, at that point in time. That would have been really cool. Yeah, I mean, so many of the friends saying, oh, I've met all these hands, and this hand and that hand. Oh, I was in this country and I met this hand. I'm so jealous. I mean, it's, and then I read the hidden word. It says, one iota of jealousy, you'll be bereft of, you'll not. So, but yeah, how cool would it be to be able to live and be able to be in their presence and to be able to, as they say, soak in their humility. I mean, to be able to feel their lives and to why it's so wonderful to be in the presence of someone that has rendered great service is because it gives you a point of emulation, because Abdul Baha is, to many of us, is a dream shot. He's so above us, and it becomes almost a dream. It becomes an idea even, and it's so far removed. But when we meet people in our own lives that are just so stellar and so of the highest caliber, it makes you want to aspire and to reach higher heights of service and sacrifice. You see, and that's why we need to surround ourselves with light, people of quality, people that inspire us, people that are on the, as they say, on the straight and narrow, and people that are active and not just fall away into the darkness and become dim ourselves. We have to be engaged and become light ourselves and inspire others. That is what it means to be a Baha'i. A Baha'i is a follower of the light. And anyway, I have a few more slides and then we're at the close.
May I say something?
Please, dear Zamzur Hijab, please.
While all this talk was happening, the one thought that comes to my mind from looking at videos, photos, readings of the past.
Sure.
What the Baha'is should have is that passion, that love for Baha'u'llah. Because
Absolutely.
once you have that, then you do anything for them. And I think if you look at history and during Baha'u'llah or the Bab's time, those people were so in love with the Bab that imagine right now we get a little burn on our skin,
Right.
how painful it is.
Right.
And to think of what they went through, it was love. I think it was their passion that they were able to bear all that.
I share, you're absolutely spot on, Zamruhi John. It's that should be burned within our hearts, that love of Baha'u'llah. And if you have children, burn that in their hearts. More important than anything else, more important than the history, the tenets, the teachings, anything is love of Baha'u'llah. The most, and before I go to you, to Riyaz John, I want to share this 2-second anecdote from my mama. My mama, when I was 6 years old, my mama always said, Ehsan, when you were saying prayers, you should sit very reverently. Baha'u'llah, His Holiness Abdul Baha, the beloved guardian, is in our presence. She sit reverently, close our eyes, fold our arms, sit reverently. And then she said this has always stuck with me. I'm now 41 years old, and she said, even if an asp, not that I was 6 years old, I didn't know what an asp was, but she said, even if an asp, she grew up in travels in India, whatever. An asp is a very poisonous snake, ASP. Okay, you can look it up. She said, even if an asp comes and slithers close to you and stings your arm while the recitation of prayer is said, even if you are not saying the prayer, if you drift from a moment of concentration on that prayer, your heart is not focused on it. You should be in state of absolute reverence and devotion. And that's my point, is that what you're saying, Zamruhi John, we should be lovers of Baha'u'llah. And this is the quote here. It says, the words of Baha'u'llah can never permeate and have an abiding influence upon mankind unless the word, which is Baha'u'llah, his word, his creative word, is incarnated into our hearts. He says, thy heart is my home, sanctified for my descent. Thy spirit is my place of revelation, cleanse it from my manifestation. His residing place is our hearts. We have to be vehicles of Baha'u'llah. Riyaz John, you had a hand.
Very quickly, since we are at the end, this issue here, Shawqi Effendi, here and in few other places, he makes it very clear, because when he wants to make something clear, he knows how to make it clear. He equates the golden age with the kingdom of God to be established on earth. I feel this is something as Baha'is, we have to internalize this concept that the kingdom of God, which Jesus Christ taught the Christian world, it is this what we are aiming for. It's the golden age of this revelation, of this, that's it, of this. So to internalize this, because more than once Shawqi Effendi makes it very clear. And so for us Baha'is, it would help us when we, to recognize that really what we are really doing is this, aiming for this kingdom of God. And it's, according to Shawqi Effendi, it's the same thing. He equates one with the other. So it is the golden age is the kingdom of God.
Thank you, Riyaz John. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. We have reached our appointed moment. And as always, thank you so much. It was very good class. Next week, we'll finish this part 96 through 100. And then we'll enter into our part 23. So, dear friends, our assigned recitation of prayer for tonight is from our dear Miss Darla. So I want to say thank you so much to every one of you. Thank you, everyone, for another great week I'll be sending out the recording as always. If anyone has any questions, as always, feel free to email me. But as we're a few moments over, we'll save those questions for email. Thank you so much, everyone, and wishing you all a wonderful, wonderful week. Thank you.
O Lord, provide for the speedy growth of the tree of thy divine unity. Water it then, O Lord, with the flowing waters of thy good pleasure, and cause it, before the revelations of thy divine assurance, to yield such fruits as thou desirest for thy glorification and exaltation, thy praise and thanksgiving, and to magnify thy name, to laud the oneness of thine essence, and to offer adoration unto thee. Inasmuch as all this lieth within thy grasp, and in that of none other. Great is the blessedness of those whose blood thou hast chosen wherewith to water the tree of thine affirmation, and thus to exalt thy holy and immutable word. Wow.
Thank you so much, Miss Darla, and wish you all a
Thank you,
wonderful
Sanja.
week. Thank you,
Thank
Auntie
you,
Matthew.
Aziz.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Allow.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a wonderful week,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye-bye,
Thank you
everyone.
much.